Today is 365 days of the worst terror attack in Israel's history. A day when hundreds and hundreds of armed Hamas terrorists entered southern Israel and massacred over 1,200 Israeli citizens, man, woman and child. They abducted more than 250, 100 plus still remain in the custody of Hamas. Israel came together today to mourn the loss and pledge that those deaths will not be in vain. News just coming in, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has held an emergency meeting of his cabinet. This is a very, very important meeting of the Israel cabinet that's being held. We are told that there were officials of the armed forces also there in this meeting, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said October 7 eve, it was very, very tense one for Israel. The latest situation, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu summoned a small group of government ministers for consultations. Ministers were again shown the October 7 videos, including unedited footage of the Hamas atrocities caught on CCTV cameras and body cams of some of those terrorists and also security forces who combated those terrorists to the last man, last bullet. Prime Minister Netanyahu has told his war cabinet this is a war for Israel's existence. It's a war for resurrection. He wants this operation to be called Resurrection War according to Israeli media, and not Swords of Iron that it was called for the past 1 year. This war is to be called the War of Israel's existence. We will have a member of the Netanyahu spokesperson team of spokespersons joining us on this special broadcast. We'll get to the latest, but right now I want to tell you what's happening here in Haifa. So 365 days Israel continues to battle radical terror, whether it's Hamas in the south or Hezbollah in the north, the Houthi rebels who target Israel from Yemen, all according to Israel backed by Iran. And the biggest question, when will Israel strike Iran? Those are multiple questions we have on this broadcast, but I want to get you this ground report, because despite the intense targeting of Hezbollah in southern Lebanon and in Beirut and the road that leads to Syria, Hezbollah continues to try and target Israel. More in this report. The situation here in northern Israel, extremely grim all through the night. Haifa, the third largest city of Israel, there were rocket attack sirens wailing through the night. Rocket attacks were happening. The Iron Dome system got activated, but some rockets fell in and around the city. This shows the intensity of the volleys that are being fired by the Hezbollah, despite an intense air raid that's been on virtually for close to a fortnight from the Israeli side. This is where rockets struck late last night. Now, if you just look around, this is a residential area. Right in the center of this residential area, a rocket struck. But if you just look around these houses, they've got pockmarked walls. The window panes are all shattered, and window panes in several of these localities are made of reinforced glass. Close to midnight, first the air raid siren went up, because that's the time Israel realized that Hezbollah was firing rockets in this area. As soon as the air raid siren went up, people living in these homes, it was between 11:30 and 11:45, people rushed to shelters in their homes, in their buildings. those buildings that do not have shelters, people rush to the staircase area of their hotels or their homes, because in Israel, as per law, they're supposed to make buildings with the staircase, which is made of specially reinforced concrete and metal for protection against rocket attacks and missile attacks. So people stayed in those shelters for close to an hour before returning to their homes. We are right now in the heart of Haifa, and this is a kindergarten. In a kindergarten, these are Israeli security forces personnel collecting the shrapnel of the Hezbollah rocket that fell very close to a residential area and very, very close to a kindergarten where little children would have been studying. So very painstakingly, every bit of that shrapnel is being collected. Now let me quickly show you. That's the kindergarten, that's the school, the damaged door, debris all around. The rocket appears to have fallen here. Debris and shrapnel have damaged buildings here. That police officer, that army officer is collecting all those shrapnels to piece together those shrapnel and try and figure out what kind of a rocket was used by the Hezbollah that targeted several parts of Haifa in the past 24 hours, especially at close to midnight. Haifa is the third largest city of Israel with a population of 1.1 million, and this is the locality that was in the line of fire. Gaurav Sawant in Haifa, northern Israel, for India Today. And I quickly want to cut across to Jerusalem. Joining us from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office is his spokesperson, David Mansa. David Mansa, welcome on India Today. Our heartfelt condolences and sympathies. 1 year, losses of life in that worst terror attack in your country, sir. This meeting that's happening in Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office, what's that meeting all about?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me join you. Look, Israel today, it's been 1 year since the appalling terrorist attack on our country. It brought back terrible memories that we heard stories from our grandparents, the Holocaust stories, the pogroms, the type of Jew killing which we experienced, which we thought had been consigned to history. We experienced again just a year ago, the beheadings, the murder of children, the rapes of men and women, and the terrible ransacking of our country and the murder of our people. You know, the impression which sticks with me still is the shrieks of delight, the jubilation with which the murderers recorded themselves, how happy they were to perform their evil acts. But Israel has come together after that. Israel has decided that this effort to destroy this country will not be allowed to continue. We will defend ourselves, and that is precisely what we will do.
This meeting that just happened in the Israeli Prime Minister's office is being described as an emergency meeting, an unscheduled meeting. Do we have any details? What was discussed at this meeting?
We are facing 7 fronts of Iran at the moment, and this country is under threat as never before. We know Iran, because they tell us, wishes to destroy this country. It's the only country in the United Nations that openly says it wishes to destroy another country. But we have, for the first time in our 3,000-year history, we have an IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, which are willing to defend us. And that's precisely what they are doing. Now, that meeting today, it was held in commemoration out of respect for the victims of terrorism, which we have had in the last year, but also the 728 soldiers who have fallen in defense of this country, and also to discuss precisely what to do about Iran. Iran attacked us with the largest ballistic missile attack ever in the history of mankind. Just last Tuesday, myself and my family were in a bomb shelter for much of the evening. This country has a responsibility to defend itself, and that is precisely what we will do. Now, We know that in this battle, we see India as very much an ally. India understands what it's like to live in a dangerous neighborhood. You too have dangerous neighbors and understand the threat of terrorism. And we've been very heartened by the kind words of Prime Minister Modi in defending, in having an appreciation of this country's willingness and desire and the imperative to defend our citizens, because that's precisely what we're doing here.
Is there a delay in responding to Iran's ballistic missile attack, which Israel has described as the largest in the history? 181 plus ballistic missiles fired in your direction a week ago. Is there a delay, point one, and point two? Is it because Israel is not on top or does not perceive it to be on top of the escalation ladder, or is there American pressure not to retaliate?
Look, we have a duty to defend ourselves, and that's precisely what we will do. Of course, I won't discuss our plans live on India Today television right now, but I can tell you that this country understands very well the threat of Iran. We know their capabilities. We know that they desire to annihilate this country. They tell us very, very clearly, you know, thousands of years of persecution against the Jewish people has taught us one thing above all, is that when an aggressor tells us they wish to wipe our nation off the face of the earth, we believe them. Now, when Iran says that they wish to do this, we know that their proxies are trying to do it for them, and the gloves are off, because Iran attacked us directly themselves, as they did again in April. We know precisely how to deal with Iran. We know exactly what our capabilities are. And I think no one should be any doubt of this government's determination to do its primary responsibility. Just like the government in India, the government's primary responsibility is to defend our people. And you can be sure that is precisely what we will do.
But the fact that Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaks of a threat and a war on 7 fronts, from Hamas to Hezbollah to Houthis to what you describe as their benefactors, Iran. Is Israel biting more than it can chew in trying to take on 7 adversaries simultaneously? And is the aim first to deal with Hamas and Hezbollah and ultimately then go after Iran?
Look, I must tell you that they're all the same. The 7 fronts all have a common denominator, and that is Iran, not the people of Iran. It's very important to remember this, because the people of Iran are as much victims of the Iranian regime as we are. They're a very unpopular regime. They persecute their own people. The regime hates freedom. They hate democracy. Israel and India have such a close link because us being one of the smallest democracies and India being the largest democracy in the world, they hate freedom. They hate the values which we hold dear, which is why they're trying to defeat us. But be in no doubt, as the Prime Minister said in his United Nations General Assembly address just last week, he said in a very Churchillian way, in the way that Churchill was warning of the power of the Nazis in Germany before the start of the Second World War. He told the world very, very clearly that this is a menace that we are facing here locally because we're in their region. But make no mistake, they're after you as well. They're after other countries, other democracies, other freedom-loving nations. So we have to face up to them here. We believe we're on the front line of civilization, which is why we believe that the India is an ally.
Okay.
It's a relationship we take extremely seriously, the relationship between Israel and India. But we know we're on the front line of civilization, and you can trust me when I say we will be victorious. Make no doubt about it.
Is there reluctance on your other allies, United States, the fact that CENTCOM chief was in Tel Aviv, the fact that Lloyd Austin, U.S. Secretary of Defense, spoke to Yoav Gallant, the Israeli defense minister? What's America telling you? Is America telling you not to target the nuclear assets of Iran, or not to go after their oil fields, or to hold off till after elections? Is that a reason why there is delay, as is being speculated in some quarters?
Look, the US and Israel stand side by side, shoulder to shoulder. We have for generations now, for decades. In fact, the relationship between our two nations has never been closer. And that's evidenced by those two occurrences which you just mentioned, the visit of the head of CENTCOM and our discussions which our defense minister is having with his opposite number, Secretary Austin. We've been side by side in this battle. I'll tell you why. Not only because we're the only democracy in hundreds of miles in any direction, but we share the same enemy as well. And that enemy is Iran. They call us the small Satan, they call the US the big Satan. So the US understands precisely what we're facing, but ultimately it is the government of Israel's responsibility to take responsibility for the security of its own citizens. That is our primary responsibility of the government, just as it is your government in India, which means that we have a duty to our people. We have a sacred duty to defend this country. Now, Iran says very clearly they wish to wipe this country off the face of the earth. We are not going to let that happen. October the 7th was an attempt to destroy this country. The following day, on October the 8th, Hezbollah attacked us. They also had a plan called Conquer the Galilee, which also tried to repeat the October the 7th massacre, but this time by Hezbollah. We know that Iran is trying to destroy this country. They only do it out of weakness. Because their control of power is so weak back home in Iran, they're doing as many Arab countries have done in the past. They use their animosity towards us as a way to hold on to power. It didn't work for other Arab nations in our region, which is why we have made more peace agreements, the Abraham Accords, which we're extremely proud of. We want to get back to that situation. The Prime Minister's made two things very clear. The first thing he said is that we're able to defend ourselves both in ways which you have seen and in ways which you have not seen yet. And the second thing he said is that the end of the Iranian regime may come quicker than you think. It's time for Iranian people to be free.
We'll be tracking that story.
This tyrannical government and this fascist Islamist style government, which threatens them and it threatens us.
When I speak to experts and analysts in Iran, they say that the government is very clear. If there is a retaliation by Israel, Iran will strike back and harder, much worse than what it had done last Tuesday. Point one. Point two, are you on top of the escalation ladder? Iran also says that this war won't just be vertical between Iran and Israel. It will be horizontal with other countries in the region, other Islamic countries in the region, perhaps UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Turkey, Egypt. They've not said it explicitly, but is that your apprehension? They may join Iran and make it into a wider Islamic war versus the Jews here in Israel?
Look, you use the word retaliation. That is not a word which we use here in Israel. We use the word defense. We have no interest in escalation. We will always go for diplomacy. That's our preferred option. We value peace. It's in our very DNA. If you're here right now, you understand the value we put to peace. Indeed, the word shalom, which means peace, is our daily greeting. It's the way we say hello to each other. So peace is in our very essence. But when it comes to Iran, if they don't want diplomacy, if they say very, very clearly that they wish to wipe this country off the face of the earth, then we have a duty to stand up to this menace. Because make no mistake, they're going after us first, but we're only on their way to the wider world and other democracies and other freedom-loving nations. We will do our duty, and listen to me when I say we will be victorious. I'll tell you why. Because there is only one homeland for the Jewish people and the others which wish to live here with us in peace. That country is right here in Israel, the only homeland for the Jewish people in the entire globe. And the 9 or 10 million people demand that this country, as it is able, defends itself, deters the Iranian menace. We have no wish for retribution, but we have a desire for victory and defense. And you can be sure we take those responsibilities extremely clearly.
David Mansour for joining me here on India Today from Jerusalem. Many thanks. So, spokesperson for Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu makes it very clear Israel will strike, choose a place and time of its choice. Now, what happened here 1 year ago that's actually shattered this entire country? 7th of October 2023. People were celebrating, people were home, or youngsters were at a music festival, the Rhyme Music Festival. And that's the time when hundreds of Hamas terrorists armed to the teeth with a plan to take back people they could abduct, with weapons in their vehicles and ammunition as replenishments, attacked this country. And for the next several days in Ashkelon and Sderot and several other parts and kibbutz and kafars in southern Israel, there was the dance of death. We bring you this report.
Israel marks 1 year of the devastating October 7 Hamas attacks. And its aftershocks 1 year later. It was on October 7 last year when Israel woke up to a barrage of rockets launched by Hamas in the largest ever terrorist attack on Israeli soil, which killed over 1,200 Israelis, mainly civilians, and hundreds were taken hostage. Now, a year on, Israel and Hamas are still locked in a devastating war. A vastly depleted Hamas fired rockets at Israel. Israel is hitting hard, striking a mosque allegedly used as a terror hideout in Gaza, killing at least 18 suspected terrorists. Families of the hostages abducted by Hamas at the Nova Music Festival last year gathered at the site near Kibbutz Re'em in southern Israel to honor their loved ones.
The families of those who were murdered by Hamas gathered at the site for a ceremony during which they recited Hebrew prayers and held a minute of silence. On this day of the anniversary of Hamas's October 7 massacre, ceremonies will be held all over Israel's south.
No one in Israel can forget the atrocities of October 7. The way that Hamas death squads burned people alive, mutilated bodies, committed barbaric acts of gang rape, and abducted innocent people into the Gaza Strip. Unfortunately, the world is forgetting. We're seeing protests around the world of people celebrating the atrocities, and that's what hurts so much. After October 7th, we thought the whole world was with us. Everyone understood that Hamas is an evil regime, and Israel has every right to bring Hamas down and to bring the hostages home.
A year on, the war is only escalating, threatening to destabilize the whole region. With Gaurav Sawant and Ameli Botbol in Israel, Bureau Report, India Today.
And this conflict is truly escalating, especially on its northern front. Even as we speak, there are Israeli fighter jets that are pounding Dahieh and Yarun and parts of central Beirut, southern Beirut and southern Lebanon. There are several places in Lebanon that are being pounded completely by Israel. Why? Because they want to take out the Hezbollah. Now the night sky lit up completely, and India Today has two brave reporters reporting from ground zero in Beirut. India Today's Ashraf Vani and Ashutosh Mishra with this report.
On the eve of the October 7th Hamas attack anniversary, the Israeli military launched airstrikes on Lebanon's capital Beirut's southern suburbs in the most intense bombardment so far, since sharply escalating its campaign against the Hezbollah group last month. Large fireballs lit the darkened skyline and booms reverberated across Beirut. The Israeli military said fighter jets struck targets in Beirut belonging to the Hezbollah's intelligence headquarters and weapons storage facilities. The IDF also struck in South Lebanon's Yaron village, claiming that Hezbollah fighters had taken shelter in it. It said strikes also targeted Hezbollah in the Bekaa area. damaged and burnt buildings were seen on Monday morning in the aftermath of Israeli strikes in Tahrir, Beirut's southern suburbs, with plumes of smoke rising from the rubble.
I'm currently in the Amatya Hills. This is the hill area of the Lebanon where mostly people come for the safety and for their security. After the bombings in the suburbs of South Beirut, many families who could afford have shifted to this hilly hill station, or we can say, of Lebanon. But here also the Israeli air defenses are following all those people who are on their target and even attacking in these hills. You can see how much damage has got created in the building.
Israel accuses the Hezbollah of deliberately embedding its command centers and weaponry beneath residential buildings in the heart of Beirut. Hezbollah, though, denies storing weapons with civilians.
This is Zaytuna port area, this is the Bay Area, and right behind me is the Mediterranean coast, and always caught in the crossfire are the innocent civilians, the citizens, and that's exactly the case what I see here in Lebanon as well. Ever since the Israel airstrike started happening in southern part, hundreds of the Lebanese or the Syrians living in that southern suburb have taken shelter near the Bay Area. They are sleeping on the road. I see the huge number of women, the children who are living here in literally difficult situation and condition, and there's always a fear as the Israel offenses are continuous, the Hezbollah also retaliating, and if the conflict escalates further, probably it will affect the entire Beirut.
The conflict in Lebanon, which started a year ago with cross-border strikes by the Hezbollah in solidarity with Hamas, has rapidly expanded in the past couple of weeks. With Ashraf Wani and Ashutosh Mishra across Lebanon, Bureau Report, India Today.
And India Today's Ashraf Wani and Ashutosh Mishra now join me from Ground Zero in Beirut. Ashraf, the situation in Beirut right now, through the night, there were these Israeli Air Force fighter jets that were pounding various parts of Lebanon. Apparently, ammunition depot is what IDF tells us was destroyed. One, is that true on ground? What was the impact of this pounding in Beirut?
Yes, Gaurav, absolutely. Each and every target of Hezbollah is being targeted here by the IDF. And about the ammunition depot, there is not only one ammunition depot of Hezbollah. There are hundreds of such ammunition depots, some in the south, some in the central, and some in the east and even north. So one of this ammunition depot was targeted in the previous night. But for day long, that area was encircled by the Hezbollah security personnel, so that there could be some kind of exclusion. That was why no one, including the media, was not allowed to visit that area. But for the long, in fact, we can say for last 12 hours, smoke is coming out still from that apartment, or we can say from that building. This is a series of aerial strikes what are being carried out during the day, in fact, in the night. Today afternoon, when there was rescue work going on, we can say the removal of the debris of one of the compartments, Israeli Air Force again targeted that particular area in the south suburb of Beirut. Not only in the Beirut, but in fact, there is a continuous Air Force strike from the Israeli army going on in the southern part of the Lebanon, where currently the army and armed forces of Israel are making ground invasion in different parts near the border of South Lebanon.
And that makes the situation extremely precarious, Ashutosh. Now that Israeli ground forces are coming in, we are told Yoav Gallant, the Israeli defense minister, he's interacted with soldiers of the 36th Division. There are elements of the 91st Division of the Israeli army. Some of those elements have already gone inside hostile territory, and some of those elements are trying to destroy Hezbollah camps. What are you picking up on the other side? What's the situation on ground with civilians? What's the situation on ground with foreigners?
Well, this kind of the magnitude of this escalation that we see, Gaurav, is reminds exactly the October 1973, the kind of Arab versus Israel war. So, looks like Israel is being cornered by multi-dimension battle from Iran to Yemen to Syria, and now even, of course, the escalating situation in Lebanon. Clearly, as far as Lebanon, Beirut is concerned, you hardly find any tourist here. What I have just heard from the UNHRC, more than 1 million Lebanese have evacuated from the southern side, and as we speak, the government has just announced there is a massive fuel and food crisis happening in the southern part, because despite warning and notice and hostile situation, thousands of these people are still living in the southern those villages, and now the supply chain has already been disrupted, and particularly after the attacking in the central part, like literally reaching the airstrike to the Beirut, in the southern Beirut, that is also escalating the situation, is now the worrying and concerning, alarming situation for the local government, because now the fuel and other crisis, the government will also be on back foot. Also, the Hezbollah fighters, those who are being, in a precise strike, they are being targeted in these areas. They are also looking a safer location in the northern and the central part. And if that happens, what we know, the kind of intelligence that Israel is using, clearly the airstrike would also escalate further, advancing towards even north and central area. So that makes situation really alarming for the people of Lebanon, those who are worrying that once Hezbollah moves their base from south to the localities in the residential area, in the commercial area, VVIPs area like Hamara and others, that will really escalate it further. And so far, Lebanon is all alone. There is no such support for the Hezbollah fighters, because Iran is fighting its own battle. Yemen, as we speak, has fired one ballistic missile from the Houthi group. But here, Israel has the air dominance on Lebanon. It carried out airstrike. The ground troops are also neutralizing the Hezbollah forces in the southern part, so it is also being cornered, and that makes situation very difficult, not only for the Hezbollah but also the civilians of Lebanon, Gaurav.
Keep tracking that story, but do stay safe. It's a very, very precarious battlefield that both you and Ashraf are reporting from. Ashutosh Mishra and Ashraf Wani for joining me here on India Today. Many thanks. Now, the situation on ground as far as southern Lebanon is concerned, while Israel wants to create a buffer zone, a kind of an area where Hezbollah will no longer dominate, that's easier said than done. And the challenges for Israeli ground forces are immense and intense in the days and weeks ahead. We'll be tracking that story. But the bigger question that the world is asking, when will Israel strike Iran and where? Will it strike the nuclear facilities, the research centers, or will it go after the oil facilities? Will it go after their economy? But that will also impact the global economy. Is the world on the same page? There are several, including France, and there's been a conversation between the French President Emmanuel Macron and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, where the French President has once again spoken of a ceasefire, which Israel clearly says is off the table.
Iran virtually declaring war on Israel with a spate of missile strikes on 1st October. And now West Asia is bracing for the biggest escalation. A full-fledged war between two of the most powerful nations in the region. US Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump urged Israel to target Iranian nukes.
It's the biggest risk we have. Nuclear weapons, the power of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. You know, I rebuilt the entire military, jets, everything. I built it, including nuclear, and I hated to build the nuclear, but I got to know firsthand the power of that stuff, and I'll tell you what, we have to be totally prepared. We have to be absolutely prepared. But when they asked him that question, the answer should have been, hit the nuclear first and worry about the rest later.
With reports claiming that Israel is readying a full-scale offensive on Iran, timed with 1 year of deadly Hamas attack and hostage-taking, where nearly 1,200 Israelis had died.
IDF is preparing for the biggest strike, and probably with the oil reserves, the presidential palace of the Iran could be the target. 7th October 2023 was a black day for Israel when Hamas attacked inside Israel. On the first anniversary of this attack, Israel want to do something big.
Israel may be planning retaliatory strikes with potential targets including the Iranian president's house, Supreme Leader Khamenei's compound, apart from Iranian oil facilities and headquarters of Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Iran may have lost another top general of the elite Quds force. Brigadier General Ismail Qani is missing since Israel targeted new Hezbollah chief Hassim Saifuddin. Qani was in the targeted compound.
It depends on whether the United States is going to fall in Netanyahu's trap of being dragged into a war. If it is going to attack Iran's economic infrastructure, Iran will retaliate.
Iran, which is believed to be a nuclear-capable state, may hit back with all the forces as it commands if targeted by Israel.
We're fighting against Iran, which last week fired over 200 ballistic missiles directly at Israel, and which stands behind the seven-front war against Israel. As Israel fights the forces of barbarism led by Iran, all civilized countries should be standing firmly by Israel's side. Yet President Macron and some other Western leaders are now calling for an arms embargo against Israel.
Palestinians are defending their own soil and their own land, and their defense is legitimate. Helping them is legitimate as well. Therefore, all of these attacks and Al-Aqsa flood operation that October last year was carried out, that was a correct move, logical move based on international law, and Palestinians had the right to do so.
Supreme Leader Khamenei on Sunday urged all Muslims to unite against Israel and pledged to hit back at the aggressor. Bureau Report, India Today.
And the biggest question remains, what will Israel target in Iran? Will Israel go after the nuclear assets? Will Israel go after the oil facilities? And if it does, go after the oil wells or the entire oil infrastructure, what will that do to the prices of oil globally? There are several satellite images that seem to indicate Iran has already started moving several ships from that area. But is that only symbolic? Now, in India, in the festive season, there was hope that oil prices will come down, but there is apprehension this war could lead to a total reversal and a massive escalation in prices.
As tensions rise in West Asia, the global economy is feeling the heat. Oil prices have edged upward, signaling potential threats to supply from one of the world's top producing regions. If Israel, supported by the United States, were to target Iran's oil installations, repercussions could be severe. Any such action would likely trigger a sharp rise in oil prices as supply diminishes.
There is nowhere in the Middle East Israel cannot reach. There is nowhere we will not go to protect our people and protect our country. With every passing moment, the regime is bringing you, the noble Persian people, closer to the abyss. But you know one simple thing. Iran's tyrants don't care about your future, but you do.
The move taken by our armed forces was the least punishment for the occupying Zionist regime in the face of the crimes, the unbelievable crimes committed by that regime, the bloodthirsty regime, the wolfish regime.
The Karg Island is Iran's main oil loading terminal. It handles over 90% of the country's crude oil exports. Oil tankers could be seen vacating the waters around Karg Island, fearing attacks. Data from the European Space Agency's Sentinel satellites processed through the Earth Observation Browser showed at least 9 vessels, likely oil tankers, east and south of the island on September the 28th. A follow-up image taken on October the 3rd captured a stark contrast, with only one vessel in the vicinity apparently on the move. An attack on Karg Island could cripple Iran's exports but spark equally harsh countermeasures by Tehran. Iran could retaliate by striking American or its allies' energy operations in the Gulf. It could blockade the Strait of Hormuz, leading to major supply chain disruptions. Iran could also step up the tensions in the Red Sea with the help of its proxy, the Houthis, by targeting oil tankers and forcing traffic to reroute. US President Joe Biden has expressed hope that oil installations will not be targeted by Israel.
The vast majority of our allies around the world as a way to bring this to an end. Look, the Israelis have every right to respond to the vicious attacks on them, not just from the Iranians, but from everyone from Hezbollah to Houthis to...
A similar face-off was last seen in April when Iran launched missiles and drones at Israel, the latter responding by attacking an Iranian airbase. The two countries stopped at that, and no further escalation took place then. The latest crisis, however, may not end that easily. With Gaurav Sawant in Israel and Rajesh Pawar in Iran, Bureau Report, India Today.
Israel has systematically gone after Hezbollah's top leadership, their military leadership, their weapons depot, their entire assets in Lebanon. So what is their strategy? India Today's Ashraf Vani with this exclusive report. He spoke to one of the key strategists of the Hezbollah. Listen in.
The resistance has rebuilt itself with respect to its command. So Hezbollah has rebuilt itself with plans and with alternative command. There is always in military circumstances a commander and then a commander for emergencies. This emergency commander also has an alternative emergency commander, and this exists in self-respecting armies, including what strategic plans they have in Hezbollah. So Hezbollah has these internal structures, and Hezbollah has the capability to alternate between one commander and another in less than 1 hour. Because the responsibility in place for the current commander transfers to the next, and they have the same capabilities. However, the commander in place has the main authority, so there is a whole level of command which is the first won't be affected, and I tell you, it won't be affected. With due respect to these commanders that has been assassinated by an Israeli aggression and their reverence, they are, because let's say, how old were they? And I think it was time for their retirement anyways, with chapeau bas for their work and their sacrifices that they did to the resistance in the way that to protect Lebanon and the people of Lebanon. And there is no way they would have retired without establishing their successors. The new commanders in place are younger and they have more effectiveness in the new technology. They have a better way and plans and youth and fresh plans for the war to continue this resistance in a much bigger effect against the Israeli entity aggression against Lebanon.
So that big India Today, exclusive India Today, is Ashraf Wani speaking to a key strategist of the Hezbollah who says there are multiple levels of redundancy. So if one commander is taken out, there is another in place already to take his position. Ashraf, that's extremely interesting. Have these attacks impacted Hezbollah operations to an extent? Point one, and point two, did he have a word on Mossad's infiltration into the Hezbollah and their ability, one, to take out leadership, and two, to take out weapons even in the storage facilities?
Gaurav, it is necessary to understand for our viewers. Actually, whole Lebanon and each and every corner of Lebanon is on the radar of Israel. There are drones which the sound of which can be heard even nowadays, but always throughout the year, these drones remain in the skies of Lebanon, Palestine, Gaza, and all the other surrounding areas, because Mossad is already monitoring each and every moment of these countries. Not only today, but even in fact, you can understand when 3 years back there was a biggest port blast here in 2020 in Beirut. That was only captured by the drones of Israel, and they released it just 2 months back. So there is not anything hidden from the Mossad. They know each and everything moment of, even they might be tracking me where I am standing. You also know it. So that is there. And also what the Americans are saying, that the pager blasts were planned since 2022. That means 2 years back. So they are always doing the advanced planning when and who is to be assassinated. That takes longer time, but they strategically form the list. As far as the capabilities of Hezbollah is concerned, you know, I know it, that they have too much capability. They have so many commanders, so many leaders, so many fighters as compared to Hamas. But as far as their strategy and their planning is concerned, you have early said that already Islamic Revolutionary Guard and their retired commanders are seeing it from Tehran, and when needed, they come to here in Lebanon and then chalk out it.
Very interesting you should mention that, and especially with Brigadier General Ismail Qani, the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Many say he's still missing. Perhaps was it Hashim Saifuddin? Both haven't been heard of for quite some days. And Ashraf Wani and Ashutosh Mishra will be tracking that story very, very closely. That is all I have for you on this India Today special broadcast that comes to you from Haifa in northern Israel. Many thanks for watching.